Elaine Chao may have been born in Taiwan, but her story is uniquely American. From arriving in the U.S. on a cargo ship to becoming the first Asian American woman to serve in a cabinet, Chao has proven that she's more than just Mitch McConnell's wife. Elaine Chao was born in 1953 in Taiwan and had 5 younger sisters. Her parents, James Chao and Ruth Chu, grew up in China during a period of war and poverty, though they were also well educated. Due to the growing instability in China, James and Ruth eventually moved to Taiwan. At first, they were separated for 2 years before reuniting and getting married, according to Elaine Chao's official website. From there, James took on a job as a merchant mariner, where he would help navigate ships. However, he was also away from his growing family for long periods of time, prompting James to try to climb the ranks in order to eventually go to the United States. James was accepted into a mariner program due to high test scores, and the Chao family made the decision for him to travel overseas. While he set out to create better opportunities for his family, it came with some heartache, as James was in the U.S. away from his family in Taiwan for 3 years. At the time, according to Chao's website, her mother Ruth was pregnant with her 3rd child. Chao was 8 years old when she immigrated to the U.S. It's hard to imagine what it was like for Ruth to be apart from her husband for so long, but it must have also been tough for her young daughters, 2 of whom were quite young when James went to the States. That said, the journey to travel to the U.S. wasn't easy for Ruth and the Chao daughters. They traveled via cargo ship, a difficult trip that took 37 days. She also noted in an op-ed for the Washington Post that the cargo ship was the selected means of travel because it was all her father could afford. The family toughed it through the Pacific Ocean between Taiwan and California. After the cargo ship journey, Ruth and her daughters then reunited with James in New York. Not only did she experience challenges adjusting to a new culture and learning a new language, but Chao also described struggling with bullying from her peers. When she first came to the U.S., she didn't know any English, though her father helped teach her after school.
I was really scared that I would not be able to catch on to mainstream America.
Not only was this lonely for Chao, but the fact that her family was in a new place without any relatives was likely isolating for them too. Nevertheless, Chao's parents pushed her to succeed throughout school and also help out at home. She also revealed that she didn't participate in many social conventions, such as high school proms. Despite all of this, however, Chao wrote in the Washington Post that her parents still created a loving home for her and her sisters. Chao's parents encouraged her to work hard and do her best in school. She admittedly achieved this and more. First, she attended Mount Holyoke College, which is a private all-women's college based in Massachusetts. After obtaining her bachelor's degree from Mount Holyoke, Chao was accepted into Harvard University, where she earned her MBA. She studied the banking industry while at Harvard, but also gained her first glimpse into public service when she was offered a White House fellowship. It was also at this point that Chao realized she identified as a Republican, according to CNN. In between all of this, Chao became a U.S. citizen when she was 19 years old. Aside from Chao's BA and MBA degrees, she also holds 37 honorary degrees. These are all doctorates, primarily in the areas of law, the humanities, and public service. Interestingly, while most of the universities that awarded Chao these honorary doctorates are located in the U.S., others are located overseas, such as National Taiwan Ocean University. After serving her fellowship in President Ronald Reagan's administration, Elaine Chao held several government roles, such as the Deputy Maritime Administrator under the U.S. Department of Transportation. At first, it seemed that she might follow in her father's early career footsteps in the maritime industry. Then, her career shifted in 1991, when President George H.W. Bush appointed Chao to the position of Peace Corps Director. During her directorship, she expanded the Peace Corps program to Ukraine, the Baltic states, and regions that were once ruled by the Soviet Union. Chao first met Senator Mitch McConnell in the early 1990s, and the couple wed in 1993. McConnell was previously married to Cheryl Redmond until their divorce in 1980. McConnell has served as a U.S. Senator of Kentucky since 1985, and the couple's paths crossed after they were introduced by a mutual friend. Interestingly, the couple chose to get married at the Capitol Chapel outside of McConnell's place of work. In a 2017 interview with CNN, Chao discussed her regret over not having children, saying, "I try not to have too many regrets. But I will say to young women, when in my generation, we were taught that we can have it all. And so it was thought, well, you have a career, and then you would, have your family. Well, it doesn't work like that." She also went on to suggest that some of her career moves were a trade-off to having children of her own, though she didn't recognize it at the time. After Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election, Chao was asked to serve on his cabinet as Secretary of Transportation. In a statement written at the time, Trump said, "Secretary Chao's extensive record of strong leadership and her expertise are invaluable assets in our mission to rebuild our infrastructure in a fiscally responsible manner. Chao was sworn in as the U.S. Secretary of Transportation on January 31st, 2017. At the time of her nomination, Chao wrote on her website that she wanted the department to prepare for the transportation system of the future. Chao then added, "The department needs to engage with emerging new technologies to address legitimate public concerns about safety, security, and innovation without hampering innovation." During her time as Transportation Secretary, Chao also dealt with crises, such as transportation management during the COVID-19 pandemic. While her experience and political affiliation seemed to make Chao a good fit for the position, her appointment wasn't without controversy. As NPR noted, at the time of her appointment, she was regarded as an establishment figure that ironically joined an administration that ran on an anti-establishment campaign. Chao was also accused of nepotism due to the fact that her husband Mitch McConnell was the leading Republican in the Senate. Other controversies emerged during her directorship. First, according to Politico, Chao was accused of helping her husband Mitch McConnell's 2020 re-election through her work at the Department of Transportation. These included grants that helped his state of Kentucky get the money needed for highway improvements. It's not clear whether McConnell could have achieved this without his wife serving in the department, but critics were quick to point this out. Brookings Institution scholar John Hudak told Politico, "Where a cabinet secretary is doing things that are going to help her husband get reelected, that starts to rise to the level of feeling more like corruption to the average American." Another point of controversy during Chao's tenure was President Donald Trump's promise of an infrastructure week that never came to fruition. As the Washington Post reported, Chao first pledged a $1 trillion infrastructure project back in May 2017. However, other events seemed to overshadow the plan every time it was promised, including various White House scandals.
You also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Within months of her confirmation as Secretary of Transportation, Chao found herself caught between President Trump and her husband. This happened early in her term, when Trump lashed out at McConnell for the inability to pass key legislative reforms that the Republican Party ran on during the 2016 election.
We're going to build a wall.
It's important to note here that McConnell was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, and Republicans held the majority in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. The late GOP Senator John McCain also famously voted no in repealing the Affordable Care Act, which McConnell described as clearly a disappointing moment.
I was never a fan of John McCain, and I never will be.
Such perceived failures angered Trump. In 2017, Trump wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, "Senator Mitch McConnell said I had excessive expectations, but I don't think so. After 7 years of hearing repeal and replace, why not done?" Chao was admittedly put in an awkward position as her boss publicly attacked her husband. When asked about the controversy at a transportation briefing, Chao famously told the press, "I stand by my man, both of them." Chao was the first cabinet secretary to resign after the pro-Trump riot on the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. In her resignation letter, she stated that the attempted insurrection deeply troubled her and that it could have been avoided. She was criticized by Republicans for not staying on for just a couple of more weeks before Joe Biden took office, as well as lambasted by Democrats who saw Chao's resignation as an attempt to save her reputation. Still, other cabinet secretaries soon followed her example. These included Acting Secretary of Homeland Security Chad Wolf and Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos. Other workers throughout the White House also resigned in the wake of the January 6th riot. Chao's resignation marked the end of nearly 4 years working in the Trump administration. However, the length of her tenure also can be perceived as speaking volumes about her work ethic. As Politico pointed out, Chao was not only one of the first cabinet secretaries appointed by President Trump, but she was also among the few who served the longest. Since her resignation from the Trump administration, Chao has endured racist attacks from former President Trump himself. While Chao and her husband Mitch McConnell have largely tried to ignore these remarks in the past, Chao is now starting to speak up. She told Politico in January 2023, "When I was young, some people deliberately misspelled or mispronounced my name. Asian Americans have worked hard to change that experience for the next generation. Trump doesn't seem to understand that, which says a whole lot more about him than it will ever say about Asian Americans." In 2023, she also penned an op-ed for the Washington Post. In the piece, Chao called for a national museum in Washington, D.C. dedicated to Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander history. No matter where you lie on the political spectrum, it's hard to ignore the fact that Chao's life and career are an inspiration. Her own personal experiences have reportedly made her passionate about making sure there are career opportunities for people from all walks of life.
Open up the doors more for more opportunities for our community.
In particular, she's talked about being a role model for Asian Americans, many of whom reportedly come to see her at the airport or at formal events. In the public eye, she's perhaps best known for serving as Secretary of Transportation. But outside of government, Chao has also held several private sector positions. These include business roles, such as serving on the board of directors for Kroger, as well as working for nonprofits such as the Ronald Reagan Foundation. She's also gained the admiration of other public servants who have commended her work and passion. Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia was quoted by Harvard Business School as saying that she appreciated Chao's dedication, compassion, and ability in the many positions she has held. Furthermore, Nebraska Senator Deb Fisher was quoted as saying this about Chao. Chao has a legacy of principled leadership and enormous accomplishment that so many of us will long remember.